meeting for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. In case you're wondering about the odd starting time for this meeting, on tonight's agenda is a budget hearing, and according to Section 200.65, subsection 2E2 of the Florida statutes, requires budget hearings to be held after 5 o'clock. So we are technically after 5 o'clock. Maybe only a minute, but still after 5 o'clock. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Most of our board members are joining us in person, but I will take roll call because not all of them are present in person. So let's go with Member Gallo.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. Member Lopez. A little update on Member Lopez. She is en route from UCF, but she's going to be a few minutes late. Member Cobert.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Member Gould.
Good evening.
Member Felder.
Good evening.
Dr. Castrodental. Vice Chair Byrd.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay, so all present or accounted for except for Member Lopez, who's en route, and Dr. Castrodental. I also want to remind the public that board members will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus on the meeting itself. To my fellow board members, district staff, and members of the public, when speaking, please make sure your microphone is turned on and speak directly into it so our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. Again, thank you for participating this evening. We will now take a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have 3 proclamations. But one of the proclamations is being presented by Member Lopez, so we're going to hold off and wait until she gets here. Let me start by asking Dr. Vasquez if you have any newly appointed administrators to present.
I do not.
Well, that didn't help.
No, it did not. I can't remember the last board meeting where we did not have a newly appointed administrator.
I don't either. So let's stall a little bit more. Do you have a strategic plan update for us today? I do. She does not.
No, we do not.
No, we do not.
Would you? I could do the superintendent's report if you would like while we're waiting for board member Lopez.
And Member Castrodental is also on the line, so we do have her in attendance.
Okay. Why don't you do the superintendent's report? And then we could also take legislative committee chair's report.
All right. So I want to first let you know that at the last board meeting, there was a request that we be more transparent with our mental health services and resources that are available. And they asked for us to have a mental health button put on our front-facing page. And so that is there for all of our families, students, and community members to access. We are also going to be coming to you with an ESSER update so that you have an update on dollars that have been spent, the outcomes of those programs that we have put in place as we are moving into the school year. Additionally, I wanted to give a brief update on the visit that we had from the Office of Safe Schools. As you know, they or may know, they visited with us last week. We had an opportunity to share with them evidence and documents related to the 3 items that were listed in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission grand jury report. The first one focused on underreporting of incidences of CESR, and we displayed what we believe to be documents where we were among the highest or second highest among the large urban districts in reporting CESR incidents, and threat assessments. In fact, at the committee meeting of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, Orange County Public Schools was specifically mentioned as they were talking about consistencies, because several other districts that had a larger student enrollment had lower reportings than that of Orange County Public Schools. Additionally, we discussed our processes that we have in place, our checks and balances, training that we have provided across the district. And so I feel that we were able to demonstrate that we were reporting and will continue to look for ways to improve on our accuracy and our reporting. The second item dealt with incidences in some schools in Apopka that occurred in 2016 and I believe 2019. Sadly, those incidents did occur. We were able to talk about the relationships that we have with all of our local law enforcement agencies, the trainings that have been provided, and the collaboration that we have with them so that those issues have improved. In fact, the chief of police from Apopka put out a statement about our working relationship and that he feels that we are moving in the right direction. The third issue dealt with the issuing or asking for a subpoena to release educational records, specifically videos. And we spoke about FERPA requiring a subpoena. We do have, as part of our agreement with our local law enforcement agencies, that they can view the video at any time. And we also provided the names of other districts that also have that same interpretation. So the next steps, they are going to follow up with a letter based on our conversation. They also visited, I believe, 9 schools across the district. And so I will keep the board updated once we receive that letter. And then my last update, and Victor, hopefully we can cue the video. We released Mondays with Maria, the very first one. It's our attempt to share, good things that are happening in our district, help our parents, our community, our teachers understand more about what's happening in our district. Some of those are going to be in Spanish as well as in English. And so I'll let Victor have them show the first one. It's very quick.
Hello, I'm Maria Vasquez, Superintendent of Orange County Public Schools, and this is Mondays with Maria.
Hi everybody, I'm Nancy Alvarez.
Hello, I'm Jamie Holmes.
Our first Mondays with Maria. This is exciting. I hope these conversations help you get to know me and our growing school district. This first segment is one that touches me personally. Hispanic Heritage Month. A lot of people don't know this, but Orange County Public Schools is 43% Hispanic.
Wow.
Incredible. I am a proud Cuban OCPS mom, so I will claim 2 of those kids. 2 of those belong to me. But watch it. But I was really surprised by that number.
So, Dr. Vasquez, how do you go about leading a district so large, so diverse, and what kind of support systems are in place to help?
So first and foremost, we want our families to feel that they are included, that they are welcome, and that we need them in order to educate their child. So there are lots of resources available to them. Some of them may feel that because they don't speak the language, they may not be able to get assistance, but we have individuals at our schools that speak Spanish and other languages, and then we have the language line that helps with the translations. Additionally, for our children, we provide training and professional development for our teachers on cultural awareness. There are resources that we have available that help them acquire the English language, and additionally we have tutoring that's available to them. But we want them to feel that we are partners in educating their children.
Yeah, it's important to note that that language line also includes Creole because we have such a huge Haitian population as well in the district. And you recently held a back-to-school news conference, and you shared some pretty incredible numbers. We have over 200 countries represented in OCPS, speaking 166 different dialects. You yourself came to the U.S. as a child, not speaking a word of English. That has to help you really connect with so many of these children that are new here and struggling in classrooms.
It absolutely does. And as a matter of fact, on the very first day of school, I was in a classroom where there were two little girls that were recently here from Honduras. They had left their grandmother behind. You could see the angst and how scared they were, and I was able to speak to them in Spanish and help comfort them, and you could see a little smile emerging by the end of our conversation. It certainly brought back memories of my first day of school.
All right. Well, we're very excited, and thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of Mondays with Maria.
It's important to note that we're also going to have this conversation en español para nuestras familias que están aquí, que quieren esta información en español.
Sí, es muy importante que nosotros incluimos a todas nuestras familias.
You got that?
Sí.
Thank you all for watching. Hispanic Heritage Month begins this week, and I am so looking forward to seeing the many activities that I know will be happening all month long in our schools across the district.
Stay tuned next week for Mondays with Maria.
Adios.
Bye.
So really, it's a credit to the wonderful team that we have. Scott and his team, Victor and Nancy is just phenomenal. She's been doing a lot of those, and of course Jamie, who never fails to bring a smile to your face. So we're excited about Mondays with Maria. We're also excited about the Slice that's also going to be sharing great things happening in our schools. It's been a wonderful start to the school year. We see so much positive energy, and we want to continue that as we move into the rest of the school year. That's my report.
Well, that's wonderful. We are not going to lose you to like Oprah Winfrey style program or anything, are we?
No, she's really good.
I know she's really good. I'm like,
So you can ask the team how fun it is for me to do those tapings. Yeah, you have no worries there.
okay, Member Gallo. And take your time. She's 15 minutes out.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. First, I want to say that I watched the Slice and Mondays with Maria. And what Member Cobart and I were talking about this today. What I love about it is that there's, like, you're watching it and you're engaged. First, they are very funny because I think Nancy Alvarez and Jamie, they just have really great chemistry and they're very funny. The first one, like, it was funny to watch. So anyways, but I love that it was so short. Like, you're watching it and you're laughing and then it's over and you're like, it's over already. So it's like 2 minutes. So it's like the perfect time. It captures your attention. It gives you a ton of information and then it's over and you don't feel like you have to like sit there for, I mean, it's like 2-3 minutes each one. So kudos, that's a great job. So we did have a legislative meeting, I believe last week, where we basically were discussing the state and the federal platforms. We reviewed some of our old ones. We talked about adding some new ones. Jason Lagash, who is our lobbyist, will be working on some language. We're going to have another meeting probably in probably end of October, beginning of November, to kind of finalize the platforms, the state and the federal platform items, so that we can bring them to a vote before this board, hopefully in November. We're thinking that there might be a first committee week in December. It will probably be more pomps and circumstance than anything else as they swear in their new members, but there might be a committee week attached to it. And then committee weeks will start in January. We don't have the weeks for those yet, but they're coming, and we want to make sure that we're ready, that our team can go up to Tallahassee and speak on our behalf. So we're hoping to finalize those in November or December with the board.
Great job. Thanks for taking the lead on it and getting on it early. All right, why don't we have 2 proclamations. Actually, we have 3. We are going to hold off on the third one for Member Lopez, but our second proclamation is proclaiming September 17th 2022 as Citizenship Day and Constitution Day, and September 26th through the 30th as Celebrate Freedom Week in Orange County Public Schools. This is a new proclamation. Many of you have probably heard about this. I think that they were both came out of the legislature. So this will be our first time celebrating those. And we are proclaiming September 19th through the 23rd, 2022 as Start with Hello Week in Orange County Public Schools. And I think probably most people are familiar with that initiative. I think we're seeing great success around the country with that as a way of welcoming all of our children, making them all, nobody needs to feel like they're an outcast in Orange County Public Schools. So that should always be our mission, and putting our children at the center of that, I think, is extremely important in making it a success. Let's move on to the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, and let me also ask while we're stalling a little bit, do we have any public comments for this evening?
No, Madam Chair, no emails, no in-person cards, and no telephonic speakers.
Okay. Is there any reason that we can't take up action on the consent agenda before the public hearings? Okay, then I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Member Gould,
Second?
seconded by Member Cobert. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with all members present voting in the affirmative.
I believe
Members?
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to you. Vice Chair is in the voting in the affirmative as well.
And I believe Member Castor-Dental is on
Member
the phone as well.
Castor-Dental is on
Aye.
the line with us. Oh, thank you, Member Castor-Dental. All right,
You're
and so we have all members except for Member Lopez, who is not present with us at this time. So next item is to move on to Public Hearing 3.01, request approval of the adoption of the millage to support the 2022-23 final budget. Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's that time for the board to consider the final adoption of your budget for this upcoming school year. Doreen Concolino will walk us through the presentation, and then the board will take appropriate action. Ms. Concolino.
Welcome.
Good evening, thank
Good
you. Chair Jacobs, school board members, Superintendent Vasquez. Tonight, I bring you your 2023 final budget. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce my team. I have with me Judith Padre, Senior Director, Office of Management and Budget, as well as Ernest Jean-Baptiste, Director, Office of Management and Budget. They are a tremendous help. Okay, here's our agenda for today's presentation. We will review the proposed millage, proposed budget, and ultimately you will need to adopt the total millage and then adopt the 2022-23 budget. When you're talking about millage rates, you're talking about property taxes, and property taxes impact both residential and commercial property. Who is responsible for each component that determines your property taxes? Just value, or a property's market value, comes from the property appraiser. The Save Our Homes cap is established by the legislature. The legislature also establishes exemptions, such as the homestead exemption, and they determine the millage rate, which is then approved by the board. On slide 5, here are property tax values used to help fund the upcoming school year. These dollars help fund both the operating and capital budgets. Last year, we had a 2.6% increase in taxable values. This year, our taxable values increased by 17.7% based upon the certified tax roll calculated by our property appraiser. The current projection, published this past August by the Office of Economic and Demographic Research, estimates another significant escalation of 9.7% in 2023, 6.7% in 2024, and then fairly steady growth of around 5.5% per year over the last 3 years on this graph. The required local effort, or RLE, is a specific amount that we must levy to receive state funding. This is equalized statewide so that if our assessments go up, our state revenues go down. Discretionary millage is the maximum amount allowed by law. Because we levy the full amount, we receive $8.9 million in additional state dollars to get us up to the state average per student. The additional voted millage is the amount approved by the voters of Orange County and will continue to provide much-needed operating funds through fiscal year 2027. Capital projects millage is the maximum amount allowed by law to support our capital program. Overall, there is a rate reduction of 0.275 mils, or 4.08%. This reduction is because statewide taxable values increased compared to the original state estimate used in the first FEFP calculation. The legislature approves a certain dollar amount to be generated by the required local effort. The significant increase in property values would have resulted in more local effort beyond what was approved by the legislature, and therefore a reduction was made to the RLE to generate only the dollar amount approved during the legislative session. This is the history of Orange County Public Schools millage rates. Required local effort, set by the state, is the red rate in the middle of each bar. You can see that the RLE has decreased by 2.211 mils since fiscal year 2010. The legislature sets the millage rate school districts are required to levy. The legislature's position to allow required local effort millage to stay flat during the 2021-2022 legislative sessions was a critical reversal of the recent trend of rolling back the millage rate. The prior rollback policy left public schools at a substantial disadvantage in comparison to other publicly funded entities. In fiscal year 22-23, the issue of millage is becoming even more critical due to the sharp rise in the property tax rolls statewide. Given the way the RLE millage is calculated, school districts see very little benefit from the increase in the tax roll. With the decision to hold the RLE millage flat in 2022 legislative session, current school tax rates are at historical lows. The rollback rate is a calculation that eliminates the impact of increased valuation. It is only used in the advertisement of the budget and in the millage adoption language. The required local effort is 6.24% over the rolled back rate, and the total millage is 10.62% over the rolled back rate. Slide 10, with Save Our Homes, residential property can only increase 3% or CPI, Consumer Price Index, December to December, whichever is less. CPI is 4.7%, and therefore 3% is the maximum increase for applicable assessed values. With the increase of 3% in assessed value and a decrease in the tax rate of 4.08%, the homeowner of a $265,100 home would pay $18 less in taxes. Commercial property is not limited by Save Our Homes. When the increase in property values are combined with a 4.08% reduction in the millage rate, the change in taxes paid for an owner of a piece of commercial property valued at $1 million is an increase of $621 per year, or around $52 per month. As you can see, the budget process is continuous year-round. Remember, the budget is a plan for the year. We must adopt a millage and approve a total amount for the budget. How the dollars are spent is not set in stone and can be amended throughout the year. On slide 14, the budget summary identifies items that affect the district budget. Board members continue to identify staff as a priority, and dollars have been appropriated for increases in compensation. We are pleased to have settled on salary increases with both unions. The budget also includes increased dollars for safety and for mental health. As a reminder, this budget includes funding for traditional schools, charter schools, and scholarships for students in private schools. Charter students and scholarship students combined are comprising a larger portion of the total budget. The temporary infusion of federal funding has impacted fund balance by allowing operating expenses directly related to the pandemic to be shifted to ESSER funding. At the same time, non-recurring expenses, such as employee bonuses in fiscal year 2022, along with transfers to the Employee Benefit Trust to maintain its solvency, have contributed to the overall reduction in fund balance by more than $43 million. The budget maintains focus on the district's strategic plan. The last bullet comes from the current special millage language, and this budget preserves academic programs, retains highly qualified teachers, and protects arts, athletics, and student activities. The special millage is folded into your operating budget and accounts for nearly 10% of recurring dollars to support our current level of operations. Here is a summary of the 5 major funds that make up the operating budget. Each fund has unique types of revenues and appropriations designed to accomplish specific purposes. The primary difference between the tentative budget and this budget is the inclusion of carry-forward projects within the capital projects budget. In the tentative budget, capital projects were $1.8 billion, and now we are at $2.5 billion. Special revenue includes our food service program as well as other special revenue. The general fund is the operating budget of the school district. The primary source of funding comes from the Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP. An increase in the base student allocation, or BSA, of $214 per student, or 4.9%, and an incremental increase of $18.9 million in the teacher's salary increase categorical allocation provides a much-needed boost to recurring revenues. Per-student funding is equalized statewide. Equalization means that increased revenue from local sources does not necessarily cause an overall increase in funding. For instance, an increase in the required local effort revenues is offset by a reduction in state revenues. However, the additional voted millage is not equalized, which means we keep all revenues generated to benefit the students of OCPS. Slide 19 shows the actual FTE for past years along with the projection for the current year. Our projection for fiscal year 2023 is 214,554 FTE, an increase of 4,251 FTE over the fourth calculation of 210,303. This forecast incorporates all K-12 students, including charter school and scholarship students. However, it does not include VPK students. For 2023 and beyond, the combined Family Empowerment Scholarship, or FES students, are comprised of FES, Gardner, and McKay students. Slide 20 is a newer slide to show the breakdown of FTE by traditional, charter, and scholarship students, and to highlight the steady increase in scholarship FTE as shown in the orange bars. 2018-19 is a benchmark year and only includes McKay students. The Family Empowerment Scholarship was signed into law in May of 2019, and FES Scholarship FTE was folded into district counts starting in 2019-2020. Charter enrollment has remained mostly flat as reflected in the dark blue bars. Our traditional enrollment, as indicated in the lighter blue bars, dipped in 2021, corrected a bit in 2022, and we're forecasting slight growth in 2023. This chart shows the comparison of per-student funding from the second calculation since July of 2007. We use the second calculation because that is the calculation in effect at the time of adoption of the budget. For this year, our regular per-student funding is $856 above July of 2007 second calculation shown in orange. For 2023, we have a 5.02% increase in regular FEFP funding over the prior year. Including our special millage shown in dark blue, our total per-student increase is $490 per student, or 5.71% over last year. Even with the special millage, you can see we still have a reduction in purchasing power of about $722 per student over the July 2007 amount. Thanks again to the voters in Orange County for supporting the special millage, which helps tremendously to sustain the programs in our schools. To be consistent, we illustrate an annual CPI, or Consumer Price Index, from December to December, which at 4.7% explains only a slight increase in 2022. Inflation has been modest over the last 14 years, with overall CPI increases of less than 2% on average until now. Next year's graph, when current inflationary increases are accounted for, 2023 will reflect a significant spike in CPI. Here is a graph of state general revenue in support of education. The percentage of general revenue going to education decreased from 48.8% to 43%. The percentage remains well below the pre-lottery amount of over 60%, as well as below the funding level during the Great Recession. While difficult to determine from this chart, for 2023, there is a significant increase in the total general revenue state budget of $7.4 million, or 20.3%. And although the general revenue funding for education increased by $1.1 billion, education as a percentage share of the total decreased, as evident from this chart. The general revenue does not include any of the federal funding appropriated through the state. And this graph shows you the percentage of general revenue going to support K-12 schools over the past 10 years. You can see that the percentage of state general revenue supporting public schools has decreased this year. There has been a substantial investment in education. As mentioned in the previous slide, the 2022-23 appropriation excludes the carryover of federal ESSER funding that was appropriated for education in the 2021-22 year. In the early years of the Florida lottery, 60 to 70% of lottery dollars coming to education were for public schools, as seen in the green bars. That number is now only 39%. Of the 39% coming to public schools, none of these dollars would be considered educational enhancement. 88% supports the regular FEFP funding, and 12% is for the district's post-secondary program. The school recognition program, which could be considered an educational enhancement, is not funded through the lottery in 2023. For this year, due to large reserves at the state level, the program will be funded using general revenue. The orange or rust-colored bars at the top, which represents 31% of lottery funds, is primarily funding for the Bright Futures Scholarship Program. Here is a breakdown of our estimated revenues by source. There was very little change in these percentages. The federal slice does not include ESSER funding, as this chart represents the general fund operating revenues, and the small federal portion is indicating what we receive in Medicaid reimbursement and ROTC funding. As noted in the budget summary on an earlier slide, compensation is the #1 priority in this budget and includes salary increases for staff while also fulfilling the statutory requirement to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour by October 1st. OCPS achieved this requirement effective July 1st. The district received $1.5 million in additional mental health assistance funding, which aligns with the board's priority to support social and emotional learning. An additional $2.3 million in Safe Schools funding is utilized to secure SROs for all of our schools and pursue other initiatives and strategies to ensure the safety of our students and staff. The last 3 bullets come directly from the current special millage ballot language. We continue to explore ways to capture additional cost savings, and we're being proactive in finding reductions to recurring expenditures. Slide 28 identifies other items that impact the budget. The legislative budget includes another significant increase in the FRS rates employers are required to contribute, which has increased our retirement costs by $10.4 million to the general fund. If we add in food and nutrition services as well as grants, the total impact is $12.6 million to all funds. The increase in the BSA is utilized in part to offset the increased cost of retirement. Enrollment continues to be impacted by Family Empowerment Scholarship students. Although the FTE forecast estimates some growth in our traditional students, the majority of the growth is in scholarship students. Funding tied to scholarship enrollment goes directly to private schools. The continued reliance on the additional voted millage will have an impact on future budget development. The recent approval of the continuation of the additional 1 mil by an overwhelming 82.1% brings some stability to the operating budget for the coming 4 years, with the purpose of compensating to teachers and support staff and to preserve academic programs, arts, athletics, and student activities. Currently, the 1 mil is expected to generate an estimated $194 million this year, or more than $906 per student. As noted earlier, the special millage continues to be folded into your operating budget to support our current level of operations. These additional revenues are critical to sustaining the level of service that the district has been able to provide since the 2011-2012 fiscal year. Thank you to the voters of Orange County. We clearly have a community that supports children and is confident in the district's ability to lead students to success. ESSER funding continues to support academic acceleration and will sunset in 2024. On slide 9, functional appropriations remain fairly constant. More than 75% of all appropriations are in the instruction and instructional support functions. The district continues to have the lowest administrative costs per student among large urban districts in the state, and the 8th lowest expenditure level of all 67 school districts. We are also well below any other comparable large district. While this is impressive, we will need to compare to see if we are too lean during such challenging times. And this concludes the general fund portion of our budget presentation. And now Judith Padres will present the capital budget.
Can we take a pause there and see if we have questions from board members? Let's begin with Member Gould.
It's not so much a question, but there's some things that I want to highlight since this is our budget hearing. If you go back to slide 21, you said this, but I want to make sure this is not lost. We are looking better. We're looking like we're gaining on this chart if you take this chart at its face value. But as you said, this has been adjusted based on historic CPI of that cost of living, which has been 2 to 3%.
Correct.
We're now reporting double-digit cost of living, and it doesn't look like it's going to recede substantially. It looks like it's going to flatten from everything that I am seeing, which means we're going to have greater gaps in our ability to pay for operations. When you look at it on a bar chart, you don't always get that equitable equation, right? So instead of, it's kind of like an exchange rate if you're getting money, right? If it's great if the dollar's worth $1.50 when you go, but it's terrible when it's worth 50 cents to their dollar. So that's the exchange rate we're about to face, which we thought we had it bad before. I think it's even going to be worse. If you go to slide 22, this is probably the slide that bothers me the absolute most in this deck. The business community is demanding workforce. They're demanding human capital right now, and they're demanding investment in human capital. And that starts at VPK through our adult education programs. And this shows that no one's listening to the entire state or the businesses that want to move their businesses here because it is a great environment to live, work, and play in. This is disturbing for our future economy. It's not so much about our public education system. I mean, it's all about our public education system. But this is very dangerous for us as an economic power in the country, the world, because we are not investing in the human capital that absolutely every business owner that I talk to or business organization I talk to is demanding that we as school board members do and that our legislature does. So I really hope people understand that. There's another place where you talked about, and it was here where you talked a little bit about ESRA being, not kind of counted in these things, because we really can't. ESRA should be a bridge to keeping us level and getting better. Just like in businesses, the tax credit, the CARES Act, ARPA that's coming through the county fundings, those are the bridges for that stability so that our economy can not only continue to float, but grow. And we're doing just the opposite with the investment in education. So we've been able to give conservatively a little bit more to the staff that is rapidly going to be behind the times again, and this is true in the not-for-profit world too. So agencies like ours and not-for-profit are facing this, and we're going to really struggle. We're already struggling. Bus drivers, LPNs. We just had speakers come before us tonight about not being able to pay competitive wages because of this graph. I mean, you can't count on federal funding for your state to make up when it's going to just disappear. It's going to evaporate. We as a country can't sustain that. So, I really hope that our community takes a look at this as we go back into this next legislative cycle, and especially the business community, help us educate the legislators that if they want an investment on human capital, they have to invest in K-12 and adult education. Our technical colleges need high investment as well, because that's how we're going to build the skills, not only for this century, but future centuries. The last thing that I wanted to highlight was parents, do your homework. I am all about choice. If you want your child to be able to go to a religious school or a specialty school or a smaller school or whatever those choices are, that's great. But please do your homework and make sure all things are equal and competitive, because as I did those choices in hunting for my own sons, I discovered a lot of things that were not equal or competitive, and actually the public school won out from middle school on from my two boys, because I did the homework, not because they had to go to public school. So things that seem free are not always free. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Sorry, no questions, just thought those things were worth highlighting and really lifting up for our community to consider.
Thank you, Member Gould. While we're on this slide, I don't know if we've ever quantified it. I think we start in the year 1985. Is that when the lottery went into place? So we've always used this as a way of looking at what the citizens' expectations were with the lottery, that was going to be enhancement dollars, not supplanting dollars. But in acknowledging that for the first almost, looks like 7 years, there was a steady decline. Even if you looked at the rest of that bar chart and averaged it out to what looks like around year 92 on, if you averaged all of those and then compared that to this year and averaged those percentages against the revenues the state has, compared that to the percent that we get this year, I would love to see what we would have from the state this year.
If we would have stayed on.
Well, I know it will hurt, but I'm not talking about going back to year 85. I'm talking about the average from the time that that it dipped all the way down to 1992, but still, it would be helpful for me to see.
I'll calculate that for you.
If the state had just kind of kept us at the same level of funding instead of declining the funding to public education, what would that have meant? And then if we can go back to the slide that Member Gould asked us to go to initially, I want to reiterate one point, because from the time I took office, I got so many emails pointing to employees' salary when they started in 2000 and what their salary is today, and then comparing that to the CPI and showing me that they were making less money. And they were. I mean, it was no doubt about it. And it's sad isn't, pathetic is maybe the right word. Sad doesn't begin to describe it. But then when you look at this chart, it brings home the point that we're in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We have this budget, and we also are getting $722 less in real dollars, just like our employees are getting less in real dollars. So while the last couple of years we've seen improvements, they still fall far short of what we need to, I think, to really recruit people into the field of teaching. We have incredible teachers who do this for the absolute love of teaching and love of students, and that is wonderful. But it just will, education is not going to continue to exist if we have to rely on people who are independently wealthy and can afford to give up their time to teach. We have to have a livable salary for our educators. And so I hear a lot of things out there, and I get frustrated because I think that it's too early to celebrate that the state's doing good when it comes to education. We're doing better, but we got a long way to go from being good.
And to your point, $722 variance, and that's with the special millage.
That's with the special millage.
If we did not have the special millage, it's over $1,600.
Yeah, yes, and we only get that special millage because our community believes in two things. They believe in our students, and they believe in the district. And so to all the men and women who work here in Orange County Public Schools, thank you for giving them a reason to believe. And I also think it's makes me really proud to live in a community where our citizens love our students this much. But yeah, without that, it would really be a dire situation. So anyway, thanks for asking us to pause for a minute and reflect on what those numbers really mean. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. I agree with Member Gould, and I agree with your Jacobs. We've made improvements towards the salary of our employees, but it's not our teachers and our educators, but it's not nearly enough to keep up with inflation. Inflation's at an all-time high. I don't know. I mean, thank goodness gas has come down. But when you just look at the gas prices alone and you look at the size of our district, we're really going to have to look at where we place teachers, because it's not like it was 10 years ago when they could drive 20 miles to a new school. Like, we have to look about where we're placing them when we're taking them from one school to another school because they're recalcs, because we have to take into consideration where we're moving them, because it's not just tolls. Gas could add like $60 to $100 a week if we're moving them far away from their home. So there's just a lot more that as a board and as a district we have to consider to make sure that we're doing right by our educators and our staff. But it impacts educators the most. They're the ones that we're moving around during the year during the recalc. I do have just a couple of questions, and they're kind of related to the ones that were already asked. So on page, I think it was 23, I know that it was mentioned, and I'm just trying to understand this, because we also know that there was billions of dollars put in reserve. It wasn't like the state didn't have money. They did well. They gave us more money than they have in the past, and so kudos to that. I don't want to seem like I'm being ungrateful, but there was a lot of money that went into reserves when we still have employees that are struggling to pay their mortgage and to put gas in their car. So they put billions in reserves, and then on top of that, they vetoed close to $1 billion. So there's a lot of money in reserves. And so what I'm trying to understand is the percent of this budget. Did our percentage go down because their budget included so much of the federal dollars that their budget kind of was fluffed? And then we didn't really we didn't consider the ESSER dollars when we're looking at our percentages. So I'm trying to understand the budget that we're comparing this to, the state budget. Did that include ESSER dollars in their state budget, which they're coming to that cliff too, right? Like all of us in 2024 are going to be at that edge of the cliff and make some decisions. So did it include ESSER dollars?
So the 2022 70.6% did include ESSER dollars. The $1.9 billion is rolled into that. If we take that out, that percentage would actually be 67.1%. So in fact, there is an increase coming into 2023.
Okay. So if we took out the ESSER dollars, just to be fair, since we're not looking at them in our budget, if we take them out of the state budget, then the picture does change.
Correct. However, in last year's General Appropriations Act, the ESSER dollars were incorporated into it, which is why the slide is reflected this way. But then I carved it out, to your point, it would have been the 67.1.
Okay, so it takes it down to 67.1. Okay. And then when we look at, I think I know this, but I just want to verify, when we look at the total dollars, one of the first slides that we reviewed on our budget, I'm trying to find it. It had us last year and this year at around $5.5 billion. Was that correct? And I can't.
Summary of funds, I think.
I don't know why.
Slide 15, maybe?
Yes, 5.2, and then 2022, 2020 is 5.97. Does that include ESSER dollars?
That does not include ESSER dollars. It does have the capital projects in there.
Okay. And what was our budget? It just seems like it jumped from 2020 to 2021. It seems like there was an increase a large increase in the budget, unless I'm remembering numbers wrong from 2020 to 2021.
2021 or 2022?
2020 to 2021. Sorry, like the 1 year prior to this is not listed on this.
That was the hold harmless.
Oh, okay.
So it really, what our enrollment was, what our transportation was, we were held harmless.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just trying to understand that in my brain. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your work.
Member Gould.
Just to follow up on the revenue, because yes, the state has ESSER dollars too, but if we could go to slide 5, and you look at our property taxes alone in Orange County and the increase, and then you multiply that by the growth in the state has a lot more revenue.
Okay.
Yes?
You can keep going.
Let me just get to the slide. I moved forward.
Okay, and now the capital projects fund. The total capital budget is $2.6 billion. The primary revenue sources are sales surtax, property tax, and impact fees. This budget includes minimal state support for capital. The primary uses are for comprehensive renovations, new schools, capital renewal, and debt service and operations. This graph reflects our 5-year forecast of capital revenues. The light blue line for other state revenue shows our CONDS projected appropriation. Based on last year's funding, we are anticipating to receive $7.7 million. The PICO line in yellow shows the state funding provided for charter capital as pass-through dollars, budgeted at $8.7 million. As you will notice, there is no yellow line in fiscal years 24 through 27, as it is unknown if the legislature will appropriate dollars in future years. The gray bar represents our sales tax revenue projections. the Office of Economic and Demographic Research anticipates a decline in sales tax revenues for fiscal year 23 and a slight increase in subsequent years. This is a result of inflation. As the purchasing power goes down, consumers begin to spend more money on non-taxable necessities like food and health care. For fiscal year 23, we're projecting to collect $310 million, or a decrease of 6.7% from this past year's collections. The orange bar shows our impact fees. We're anticipating to receive $80.9 million in fiscal year 23. This projection is based on a 3-year collection average as well as historical permit trends. Revenues will ultimately be impacted by the increase in interest rates and housing inventory offset by population growth in the county. The blue bar represents our 1.5 capital mill revenue projections, which for fiscal year 23 amount to $291.7 million. Estimates are based on the district's updated property assessed valuation. On slide 33, this graph illustrates our recommended capital projects use of funds for fiscal year 23. Carry forward funds have now been incorporated into the budget. The largest portion of our capital budget is allocated to additional schools at 27%, followed by district-wide capital at 26%, which includes appropriations for district-wide construction, functional equity, ancillary, major painting and flooring replacement projects, capital renewal, and site improvements. The third largest is comprehensive needs at 22%. This includes projects for schools listed in the original sales tax list, as well as the pre-2003 sales tax school projects. The adopted capital plan reflects the following: funding for 17 relief schools, 10 elementary, 1 K-8, 5 middle schools, and 1 high school. Functional equity. This budget includes $10.7 million for projects that are primarily intended to add permanent instructional space and reduce some portable instructional spaces. Funding is allocated to a list of pre-2003 sales tax schools. These schools are earmarked for projects based on the capital needs as identified in the district's condition assessment. Funding is also included for repurposing schools. And then capital renewal. In accordance with the referendum, a portion of the sales tax revenues is transferred to the capital renewal fund to cover major system replacement needs. This plan continues to fund that transfer. Based on need, we're anticipating that the capital renewal fund will be fully committed by fiscal year 27. Now on slide 35. These are our recommended 5-year new school openings. This list of new school openings is based on the AP committee recommendations and has been approved by the Capital Programs Steering Committee. We have 5 new schools that opened last month, which include 3 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 K-8. In August of 23, 1 middle school will open based on this recommendation, including 2 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school. In 25, the plan includes the opening of 1 new elementary school. Now, these are the comprehensive projects that are entering construction. This slide only shows those projects that are moving into the construction phase this fiscal year. As this slide reflects, Orange Technical College East and West campuses, and as part of our pre-2003 sales tax schools, we have 3 Points, Howard, and Lakeview Middle, which will be moving into construction. As you know, we have other projects that are on their second year of construction, but are not shown on this slide, such as Orange Technical College, which is the one downtown. Comprehensive projects entering design. The design of Avalon, Camelot, Citrus, and Endeavor, as well as Ocoee Middle School, will be starting in fiscal year 23. As noted above, these schools are part of the pre-2003 sales tax schools. On slide 39, our recommended CIP also includes funding for buses, which are on a 9-year replacement cycle, portable moves and leasing, which is included to help manage population fluctuations. Of the $39.1 million, 9.5 is for leasing and 29.6 is for portable moves and installations. 8.7 million is included for charter schools as a flow through from the state. There are also dollars included in the plan for district-wide painting needs and for digital technology replacement, which includes the replacement of classroom technology and digital-related infrastructure. This concludes the capital portion of our budget presentation.
Okay, well, a couple of questions. Member Felder?
Good evening. Thank you so much. You guys do such a great job in giving us exactly. And even if we have questions, you come to see us individually to make sure we're clear. All right, I just have a couple of questions. Let me go back to page 34. Okay, capital plan, I just need to make sure I understand. Capital budget has to do with the monies that you're providing for the district for any kind of construction things you need to have done, right, for the schools. All right, says includes funding for functional equity projects, provides funding for pre-2003 sales tax school projects. All right, I need some clarification here. Explain that to me. Provides funding for pre-2003 sales tax school projects. Are these school projects that need to be renovated, or is this new school projects that you're continuing? Explain that. Help me understand that.
When the original sales tax referendum was approved, there was a list of 136 schools. Well, not all schools were on the list because at the time they had recently had capital work or renovations. These are those schools that were not on the list and that are now in need of renovations. They're not new schools. They're
Just the need for renovation. Okay,
Correct.
That's what I thought. So now I'm speaking specifically to Jones High School. I know that they did have a capital renewal project when my predecessor, Dr. Gordon, was on that committee. And I've been in discussion with superintendent, has been very kind to help me understand some things, and I'll be meeting again with Rory, Mr. Salabini. But I have some concerns when I'm seeing that you have renewal projects. The roof at Jones High School, and I understand there were some problems prior to my on this board, and I also understand that the district, in addition to what happened, they put in approximately 16 million, the late Mr. John Morris explained to me, and I appreciate that. But I have some concerns when I look at the renewal projects, and if you go to page 36, you have 2024, you have new schools coming in, 2024, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Up into 2025, and these are new school openings. I know that prior to the pandemic, no one expected the pandemic was coming in, so I know that probably there were a lot of materials, I've been told, have been on delay and so forth. But my concern, I don't see in terms of Jones High School and the roof. And I know that I did talk with the late Mr. John Morris, and he did promise me that they were going to they were going to try to attend to that because there's going to be a lot of renovation. The roof is not working. Children are sitting in classrooms with 5 buckets in a class, and I've talked to Mr. Salabini. We're going to meet again later on this week, in fact, tomorrow. But I am concerned when we talk about the money. When you look at page 37, Orange Technical College East, you have 3 Points, you have all of these schools, and then on slide 39, which gives us, stop it, yeah. The district-wide painting, 6.4 million, digital technology replacement, 26.8 million, portables and leasings and all of that, school bus replacements. And maybe you need to explain, maybe I need some help on this, but I don't see where there's any inclusion of the renovation for Jones High School. I know that it came much earlier than I was voted on this board, but I'm looking at what I see right now. In 2022, Jones High School is the oldest school in this district. It's older than the district is as an established district. And I'm having some concerns that I'm having to tell members of my constituency that we need to wait. When I have children in 2022 sitting in a classroom with 6 buckets in the middle of a floor, and there's water dripping. I've been told that there's going to be some patching up, and the tiling and the ceiling will be replaced. But the concern I have about replacing the tile, this is Florida. In this season that we're having, it rains every day. So even when you replace the tile, it's going to get wet again. And mildew does take time to come, but some mold, it does come. So and I was told that by spring, May, I think it was, 2023, that a full replacement. I'm just wondering, since I was told that I don't see it included in here, and I may need some clarification, because again, before I got on the board, I see the picture out front when Dr. Gordon and the previous board, it was a part of the capital renewal funding, and it did some things. However, right now, I have a concern that where is that school going to fit in terms of the improvement? Because clearly, unequivocally, there needs to be a new roof. There needs to be a new roof so that we won't keep patching up. And I am very grateful. And I know some of the members of my constituency, as I explained to them, that even after we had done what we had done, the district had to do an additional $16 million to straighten up some things that did not happen that should have happened. And I'm appreciative of that. But again, I don't see them mentioned. Does it mean that it's not going to get done? Because I don't see their names mentioned in this renewal. But I need you to know that from my perspective right here, it needs to be fixed. It needs to be corrected. I can't imagine sitting in a classroom when a school is only 22 years old and I have 6 buckets in the aisleway collecting water.
So let me call on Dr. Vasquez first to address that.
So the roof replacement is funded, and it's already under contract.
What does that mean when you say it's under contract? They're going to do it.
Yeah, it's already, you've already approved the dollars for that, and there is a contract for work on that.
So it's going to get done. We're just waiting for what, materials? I just want to make sure.
It's starting in the spring, I believe, is what I shared with you yesterday. Yes, please come up.
Thank you.
It's a group 3.
While he's coming up, but I understand where you're coming from when you don't see it in here at all. It raises that question because that.
Well, I only said it because I saw something that said 2003.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and this is 2022.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I totally understand why you're asking because it's not showing.
And
here.
I've been promised. We've talked about it, but I know people are looking at the board meeting and they're seeing these signs.
Absolutely, and they're not seeing this. Totally, got it.
Okay, yeah, so as Dr. Vasquez said, the roof contract was let actually in June of this year for replacement. Roofing materials is one of those items that is severely impacted by the supply chain issues that have resulted from the pandemic. It takes a year to get the amount of roofing materials that we need for a school the size of Jones. But the contract, we can't execute contracts unless the funding's there. So the contract has been executed and the materials are on order. We do expect them sometime late winter, early spring, and that's when the construction will start on the replacement. We do have, in fact, I just approved today a contingency expenditure for that contract to allow the roofer to get up and make those temporary repairs that we talked about. So those will be starting really, if not this week, then next week. But
so, excuse me to make sure you said the roofing replacement will start this week?
No, the repairs, the temporary repairs to address the leaking that we have that you referenced will start again. It's more likely next week, but again, the the change document to authorize that work, I approved today.
So while we're waiting for the materials to come in, I do understand that there's been a backlog or whatever the reasons because of the pandemic or whatever, that we're waiting for that. But I just need to have some clarification so that when I go back to the members of my constituency and they have questions, because they do. They have real questions, they have real concerns. And I have talked, but I need, because many of them are looking and they're seeing all of this on the slides. So when we meet on tomorrow, I think it is, Mrs. Salabini, we're meeting tomorrow, we'll talk more, but I just wanted to make sure that looking at this, it doesn't mean that we're not included. We are included. Am I? That's correct. I'm included in this, right? Jones High is included. Just wasn't mentioned, but it is included because it's part of capital, the funding, and that allocation is going. So we're hoping that by May, you said, hopefully, that they could start replacing that roof, because you're going to patch up by next week, but hopefully by May, complete roof, right?
We'll start the roofing. It does take some time to get the entire campus roof, but the roofing project will start in May of next year.
2023. Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure that will, some of the parents that have sent me the emails and sent me the pictures, that can bring some happiness to them at least. Thank you so much. That is a concern, and I'll keep coming back until I see a change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Felder. I just had one question on page 34, and I'm so glad Member Felder covered that because I know that's a concern in your district, and rightfully so. So page 34, at the very end, we talk about the capital renewal fund being fully committed by fiscal year 2027. By that, we mean all the funds that are in there will be committed for other projects.
Will be allocated. They may not be spent because, as we know, we issue a contract and by the time we pay it out, but they'll be committed to specific project based on the needs we're seeing.
So if we are not successful in our next referendum, we will run out of capital renewal funds.
Yes.
And then when we have projects like this roof that we're talking about, we will not have a funding source for that.
That is correct.
Unless we suddenly have a tremendous slowdown in growth and we can switch those dollars over.
We have the $1.5 million, but those dollars are committed for debt service. We buy buses, painting, we do all of that.
That $1.5 million that used to be $2 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't get renewed, we'll be coming back to you. Direction.
Boy, I feel like you're constantly living on a shoestring that could break any moment. And quite frankly, that shoestring totally depends on the electorate and their, as I said, their confidence in the district and their commitment to our students. So, all right, thank you. No further questions. Okay, back to you, Doreen. Ms. Concolini.
Okay. So our debt service fund. This fund is used to retire the indebtedness the school district has incurred for construction projects. The primary source of funds is a transfer from the capital projects fund. There are no significant changes in the debt service fund. The special revenue fund includes the district's food service program and special revenue other funds. The other funds are primarily school internal accounts and extended day programs. Other federal grants such as ESSER, Title I, and IDEA are amended into the budget as approved. The food service program is supported primarily by federal reimbursement, USDA commodities, and also from fees charged for meals served. Food and nutrition services ended fiscal year 2022 with a gain in fund balance. During the 21-22 school year, the USDA granted flexibilities that allowed program operators to continue serving free meals to children until May 30th, 2022. For the 22-23 school year, the waiver has expired, and students will receive meals according to their meals benefit status. The economy of scale in food preparation and the increased federal reimbursement rate for all meal benefits should allow food and nutrition services to operate at a gain for 2023. And there are no changes to meal prices this year. The special revenue other are funds restricted or committed for specific purposes. School internal accounts are used to account for monies collected and dispersed by each school through fundraisers and other student-related extracurricular and co-curricular activities. Extended day accounts are used to account for all monies collected and dispersed in support of the program. The Extended Days program, before and after school activity, provides a safe and supportive environment for children, and the main source of that revenue is user fees. The Internal Service Fund accounts for the district's Employee Benefit Trust Fund, Property Casualty Loss Fund, and Printing Services Fund. The Employee Benefit Trust Fund revenue comes from board contributions for employee coverage and deductions for employee and dependent coverage. The expenditures of this fund include payment of medical claims, prescriptions, and mental health. In prior years, through ESSER funding, the district was able to reimburse the Employee Benefit Trust for the cost of COVID claims and prescriptions, totaling $28.4 million. Effective October 1st, 2022, the district offers 4 plan options, which includes the new SureFit plan, with 2 of the employee-only plan options available at no cost to the employee. Board contributions for employee-only coverage are $9,289. The Property Casualty Loss Fund includes payments for property, liability, and workers' compensation claims. Revenues for this fund are from charges to other funds. The Printing Services Fund is self-supporting and receives revenues from charges for services to schools and departments. And now I'll turn it back over to the superintendent for comments and discussion. Once discussion is completed, the total millage must be adopted, and subsequently, the 2022-23 budget will need to be adopted.
Thank you. Dr. Vasquez.
Thank you to Ms. Concolino and to Ms. Prodras for your due diligence on this presentation. Members of the board, as required by statute, I present to you a balanced budget for the 2022-23 school year. As mentioned, our budget remains fluid throughout the year, and we make necessary amendments when required. So we would request your approval both of the millage and of your final budget. I know that we've had one-on-one meetings and the tentative budget hearing questions that were dealt with previously and some this evening. And if there are, we are ready to listen to any additional questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. Let me start by asking if we have any public comments. I don't believe we received any cards, but it is a public hearing, so this would be the time for public comments. All right, seeing none, are there any comments from board members or discussion from board members? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I would like to present the resolution on the millage, Chair.
Thank you.
Whereas Section 200.065 of the Florida statutes requires that the school board adopt a total millage to support the final budget and notify the property appraiser of its action, and whereas the 2022-23 final budget is based upon a total millage of 6.462 mils, which is more than the rollback rate by 10.62% as computed pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida statutes. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the School Board of Orange County, Florida, that the board does hereby adopt the following millage to support the final budget for the 2022-23 fiscal year. The required local effort 3.214 mils. Basic discretionary, 0.748 mils. Additional voted, 1.0 mils. Capital improvement, 1.5 mils, for a total of 6.462 mils. Be it further resolved that the superintendent immediately informed the Orange County property appraiser of the action of the school board in the manner prescribed by law. And I would like to move that we adopt the millage as presented in this resolution.
All right, we have a motion by Member Colbert. Do we have a second? Second by Member Gould. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vice Chair?
Aye.
Member Castrodental?
Member Castrodental had to step off.
Oh, okay. Member Castrodental is no longer with us, so the motion carries with all members participating, voting in the affirmative. And now for the request for approval of the adoption of the 2022-23 final budget. Once again, I'll call for any public comments. Seeing none, any board discussion? Seeing none, and I'll open the floor for a motion.
I would like to present the resolution on the final budget. The resolution is as follows. That the board approve the 2022-23 budget for the general fund in the amount of $2,464,570,651. That we approve the 2022-23 budget for the special revenue fund in the amount of $285,694,898. That we approve the 2022-23 budget for the debt service fund in the amount of $238,173,675. That we approve the 2022-23 budget for the capital projects fund in the amount of $2,596,615,714. And that we approve the 2022-23 budget for the internal service fund in the amount of $385,173,621. And I move that we adopt the final budget as presented in this resolution.
I have a motion by Member Colbert. Do we have a second? Second by Member Gallo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Vice Chair?
Aye.
Motion carries with all members participating, voting in the affirmative. We have already approved the consent agenda. We've had the report by the superintendent. Member Lopez, we were stalling a little bit, waiting for you to get here. And have we done the proclamation? No, now we get to do the proclamation. So, Member Lopez, would you do the honor of reading the proclamation?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas Hispanic Americans have played an integral role in Florida's history before the early pioneer days of our current legacy of leaders in international trade, technology, education, and aerospace. And whereas Hispanic Americans share a rich cultural and linguistic heritage and are a vital part of our economy. And whereas Hispanic Americans have enriched our social, intellectual, and artistic life in the United States. And whereas Hispanic Americans are the youngest and fastest growing segment of the U.S. and are expected to contribute 62% of the nation's population growth through 2050. And whereas our district student population includes 43% who are of Hispanic descent, and whereas celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15 to October 15 allows us to appreciate and validate the diversity and character of our students, parents, teachers, and staff. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the School Board of Orange County, Florida does hereby proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2022 as National Hispanic Heritage Month in Orange County Public Schools and encourages teachers, administrative staff, support personnel, and students to participate in activities in promotion of the Hispanic heritage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me ask you, because it's Hispanic Heritage Month and it's your last proclamation that you will read for this board. Do you want to read it in Spanish?
Do we have it in Spanish?
No. No.
I have to
Kind of
translate.
hard,
It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah, it's very hard.
I can say something in Spanish.
Okay, say something in Spanish.
Just as a summary,
please,
of the Hispanic Heritage Month.
I'm so sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to invite, all of us, all of you, and people that are watching us through YouTube to come to Colonial High School on October 5th. We're going to celebrate our Hispanic Heritage Month at Colonial High School. It's going to be the first time that we're going to celebrate the Hispanic Heritage Month out of the school board room. So it's going to be a big deal, so we have more space, and we invite in all of the art teachers in the district. So we're going to have art pieces from different district 2, 3, 5. So all of us are going to be there representing. So I invite you, and we're working with Nancy Alvarez.
Yes.
So we're making videos. It's gonna be amazing. I think we're gonna have a lot of surprises. So be there.
Yeah.
I would love to see all of you to celebrate. I'm gonna be there anyways every year. I don't care if I'm not the school board member anymore. But as a constituent, as a mom, I'll be there supporting all of you. So en español, es un honor para mí celebrar el mes de la hispanidad aquí en Orange County Public Schools. Realmente esto comenzó cuando yo empecé a trabajar en multilingüe. This type of event started when I came here working for the multilingual department. And I remember working with Josie and all of the personnel from the multilingual department to develop this event. So when I became school board member, I decided to continue the tradition. So empezó en el multilingual department, entonces cuando llegué como miembro de la junta escolar, decidí continuar con la tradición. Así que es para mí un honor que estemos celebrando nuestra cultura latina, ya que somos 43% y creemos en la inclusividad y en el respeto, ¿verdad?, de la diversidad de nuestras culturas. Así que es un honor para mí también celebrar este día con la primera superintendente latina, doctora Vázquez. Sí. Gracias a todos.
Wonderful. Maravilloso.
Thank you.
Okay. And do we have a report from our general counsel? Was that the wrong word, maravilloso?
No, I was just going to opine that if Jamie Holmes was here, he probably would say C.
I almost did. And I was like, I can do better than that. Not much.
No, I don't have anything.
You don't have anything? All right. Before we adjourn, this is always the time for board members to bring up any policy level issues that they would like to schedule for another time. I do want to comment, and I'm going to, obviously ask for any suggestions, but I do want to comment on the request that we've had to recognize suicide and safe storage of firearms. And I don't know if that's a day or a month or a week. I know that the subject of firearms is so heavily politicized, but what they're asking of us is not to take a position on firearms. It's simply to take a position on safe storage of firearms. And we take a position on children learning to swim because it's a safety issue, right? Do we? We did in Orange County. Do we recognize safe swimming? I think we do. If we don't, we're going to. And we won't have any pangs of conscience about it, and we won't be worried about any political ramifications or stepping on anybody's toes. So I think that I would be very comfortable with recognizing this. I think it's a sincere problem of storing guns safely. We've seen in our own community cases where young children have killed their siblings accidentally playing with a gun. And I think it makes sense for us to care about our students and our children. So I would be comfortable with that, but I certainly wouldn't bring it forward not knowing whether the board is comfortable. Member, Council, you have concerns first before I...
No, I've looked into the issue and I wanted to report to the board what I found so far about the Be Smart program.
Okay, why don't you do that, and then I'll take the rest of the comments.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad you did.
So what has been asked is that we distribute their program materials about Be Smart. And you have policy KHC, which is the distribution or posting of promotional materials. It's basically divided into two sections: active distribution, which is normally what we give from our government-related partners, and passive distribution, which is made available for parents, students, employees to take. The Section 3A under your policy specifically states that materials of a denominational, sectarian, religious, political, or partisan nature shall not be permitted to be distributed. So that made me go back through and take a look at the Be Smart framework, which is designed to help parents and adults normalize conversations about gun safety. And it is specifically a program of Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund, which is a 501c3. However, it's also registered through Everytown for Gun Safety Action Fund, Inc., which is not a 501c3, rather it's a 501c4, which focus on advocacy and legislative work. And what's interesting about a 501c3, normally your nonprofits, your organizations, charitable, education, or religious purposes, a 501c4 is actually a social welfare group under the IRS with more freedom to lobby. So they're political. They can endorse specific candidates, political action groups, and they have unlimited spending with politics and undisclosed donors through political action committees. So looking back for the Moms Demand Action, those speakers have certainly continually referred to Be Smart as their program. And on their Moms Demand Action website, they have the Everytown for Gun Safety logo. And the tagline is Moms Demand Actions for Gun Sense in America. And under their About page, it says grassroots movements of Americans fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. They work to close the loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our families. And there's volunteer chapters in every state. What I have been able to find on Sunbiz is our registration for Florida corporations. I could not find Moms Demand Action, so I need to look further. I might have missed that. But there is Everytown for Gun Safety Action Fund, Inc., which is active, and it's the foreign not-for-profit corporate. Even though they have address in Tallahassee, all the officers and directors have New York addresses. So the concern is that under your policy, KHC right now, it would be materials from a political organization that would not be permitted. And so your policy was last adopted in February of 2015.
And did you do all that today while we were in this meeting?
I did that while we were in this meeting, yes. Well, we're in between, so we're good, yes.
Well, I sincerely appreciate you looking into it, and I'm quite impressed that you were able to find that much. I mean that genuinely.
It's very transparent. It's
Yeah.
Everything is available.
Yeah, if there was support, I was going to ask that we have you look into it. So there you go. You looked into it. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually very familiar with Moms Demand Action in Everytown because I work with them a lot in Tallahassee on gun-related issues. So while they are a political organization, they are at its core a grassroots group of moms that are really nonpartisan. They don't do party politics. Everytown, usually when I have a nonprofit that's a C4, and you do it for, and my nonprofit is not a political organization at all, but you do it because you can lobby more in Tallahassee, and if you want to endorse, you can endorse. When we started the coalition, or the Florida, Prevent Gun Violence Florida, we opened it up as a nonprofit C4 so that we could lobby, because you are really restricted in a C3, the amount of time and the amount of dollars from your nonprofit that you can use in that lobbying, and it's if you don't have a lot of money, you get to that point rather quickly, and then it would invalidate your C3 status. So I don't want to like negate a company because they have a C4, because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're partisan. They could be nonpartisan, even though they do. I mean, most nonprofits lobby in Tallahassee. Most nonprofits, if you're not lobbying in Tallahassee to get funds or to promote your product, you're having a much harder time here on the ground implementing any type of structure that you need to implement in the state of Florida. So I don't want the board to look at that and think, oh, this is politics, it's partisan politics, because my experience with Moms Demand Action, who is very much run by Everytown. Like, Moms Demand Action is a program that was created by Everytown. Everytown created Moms Demand Action. They are typically advocating for what you would probably consider partisan issues, but they're not necessarily a partisan group of people. They come from all different parties. So in what they've sent the board, and I know that the board's received some of this information, they're basically just wanting us to put, and I know that they want more, but I know a couple of the districts, including Seminole, I think maybe Seminole, maybe Alachua, have put some information on their website, just kind of detailing what it looks like to keep safe storage. And I believe, and someone, you can correct me, General Counsel, if I'm wrong, I think in Florida it's a state law that if you have a child in the house under 16, you have to store your gun. So kind of distributing that information that, hey, by the way, this is state law, and then giving some guiding principles with that on a safe way to do that and what that should look like. I think we're actually doing a service to our community. So I would be in support of anything that, from drowning in a pool to gun violence, anything that can keep our kids safe in our community and thriving, I would 100% support. But I understand that we may need to look at a policy or review it more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Gallo. That was very informative as well. Member Gould?
Thank you, Member Gallo. You are along the lines of what I was thinking is maybe we don't necessarily align with the entity, but we deliver the message on safety, just like we do on swimming and heart and the importance of getting CPR trained and all of those things, because this is about child welfare and family safety. So I think that is very logical to do. And I do think it also meets the law in some ways, and we're helping to support those laws that happened after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Member Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Ms. Enval. So as a school board, we cannot advocate for gun safety because it's like a political issue. And
No, I think the request from the organization was to promote their flyers and their Be Smart program. And so
okay.
under your policy KHC, which governs your distribution of materials to families, we can't necessarily take their information and pass it on.
Exactly.
It would have to be some sort of other thing. We just can't take their information and pass it on under that policy.
Okay, perfect. That's all.
So to Member Gould's suggestion, though, and I think Member Gallo, who stepped out, if we created our own document, and whether it's something that is on our website from, or maybe it's once a year when we make this emphasis towards the beginning of the year, preferably. And I'd really like the idea of including in there what the law is, because for anybody who might think that this is a Democratic push against guns, we have a Republican legislature that put in the requirement. I think that neutralizes that whole argument, because that's not what it is. It's just about keeping kids safe. That's maybe something we could look at. Member Coberts, you're comfortable? Member Lopez, you're comfortable? Member Felder, are you comfortable with that approach? I'm not saying we're doing it, but have council and superintendent look into that approach?
I'm sorry.
We're talking
I stepped out,
okay.
but because I wanted to comment, but I thought I don't know, you were still be talking about it. But no, we can't legislate and say that we have any comment about how they do it. But I am concerned that, interesting what the young woman mother said, that we have bulletproof vests, but we can't bulletproof children. That struck me, because we can't. but we certainly can support what they're doing, because whether you're a Democrat or Republican has nothing to do with the lives of children. Has nothing to do with that, because we're here in the business of children. That's why this is what we do. So yes, thank you so much for allowing me that time. But
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Final comment, Member Gould?
No.
Okay.
In case.
Member Byrd, Vice Chair Byrd, are you with us still?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I'm totally in agreement with moving forward with this. I agree that I think it is incredibly important for the safety of our kids. And I think any responsible gun owner would agree that keeping firearms safely under lock and key with children is important. And as Member Gallo said, I believe it is the law. So I think spreading this message is a great service for our community. So I'm all in favor.
All right, so we will leave it to our general counsel to work with our superintendent to come back with a proposal for how we would do that. And we will do
Madam
it
Chair.
independent of any other organization. Mr. Palmerini.
For the record, just because I quote statutes, it's what I do. 790.174 requires a trigger lock when it's being stored at the home and when minors can readily access it, and that's for minors to find anybody under 16.
Great. Wonderful. All right. Thank you. Member Lopez, did you have any further comments? Okay.
No.
Any?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple of policies that I do want to review. I kind of want to, I know that we're going to be having a board meeting, I think, next week, and I would kind of like to flesh them out there to see for agreement. But there is one thing that I want to bring up, and I'm only bringing them up because in our consent agenda, we approved the uniform statewide assessment calendar. And while that's not the calendar that I'm going to be referring to, it reminded me that I wanted to bring this before the board. In our normal, I would like the board to consider, and I believe Member Castor-Dental has mentioned this before, when we look at the calendar, and I know that we've set in stone our calendar for the next couple of years, but as we move forward, the primary and the general elections, in the years that we have those, I know that we're required by statute to actually use our facilities, our government facilities, which are our schools, during those two dates. I'd like to recommend that we give those days off to the entire school. It could be a teacher work day. It could be a day off for everybody. It would give everybody the chance to vote, and then it would secure our campuses. Every time that I pass by one of my schools and I see it as a polling site, I have angst. We do so much to secure our schools, to protect our students and our staff, and yet we're letting people on our campus that doesn't even have to check in with the front office, and it bothers me. It just bothers me that we're doing, and I just don't feel that's safe. And I understand that we do the best that we can, and we do secure the campuses. But I just think that with everything going on and everything that is required of us to make sure that our schools are safe, that it would be imperative for us as a board to kind of take the initiative to close our schools or make it a teacher's work day. Just do whatever we can so that we can fill our duty as a board to allow those buildings to be used for polling sites, but then also keep everybody safe at the same time.
Thank you.
And give everybody an opportunity to vote.
I think you're going to have unanimous agreement on that, but our council has pushed her button again. What did you research?
So you do have a calendar committee.
Yes,
and
we
we do
do.
take input from parents and teachers and staff on that, because I do think this would be something, if this is something you're going to do. This year they only used 19 campuses, and so that's less than 10% of our campuses. And I could get the exact numbers from Mr. Cowles as to who actually turned out to vote at those particular campuses, but he was estimating roughly 30%, so he was thinking just a couple each hour. So if you've ever visited our campuses, those two activities are completely separate from each other, but it's definitely something that our calendar committee can take a look at, and it's something I think you definitely want some input from. And I think Mr. Palmerini has some statutory references to give us, or something else.
Actually, not statutory references this time, contract. with CTA, we also have to negotiate the calendar with them and try to reach a mutual agreement prior to March 1st every year. And thereafter, if we don't have that agreement, then we can implement a calendar within certain parameters. So obviously, this is something that we would bring back to them first in order to try to work that through under our labor contract. So I just wanted to point that out just so we had that.
Thank you. Now, Member Gould.
I was going to save this till next week, but since this came up here and it can be put into the hopper either to workshop before our next calendar committee. But since we do not test the way that we have in the past, perhaps we could also look at aligning the schedule to be a little bit more fall to spring and not send kids back in the absolute top heat of the summer, which also our hospitality and many other employers would like as the tourist season continues when our kids go back to school and it takes their jobs away because they have to come to school and they have to leave their jobs. So that's something else I would like to throw in the hopper for the calendar committee to consider of maybe going a little later in the year. If we can, now that we're not in that testing cycle that we've been in the past and didn't want that loss of learning over the Christmas holiday.
So, General Counsel, I definitely understand Mr. Palmerini's point, and that contractually we need to negotiate. As far as the calendar committee, is that a policy issue that they have?
You have a school calendar policy. I don't know what number it is or letter it is off the top of my head. We'd have to take a look at that. That probably needs to be revised or taken a look at.
I think we should look at that because I do think that the board who appoints the calendar committee should not appoint a committee that has more authority than the board.
Well, they just present you with a recommendation. You don't have
Right,
to
which
take
we
it.
don't have to take.
Right.
Okay.
And you don't have to, remember, you have to start school after August 10th.
Yeah. Okay.
Statutory.
Any other policy issues we're going to have? Is it next week that we have our board planning session?
21st, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and that agenda is pretty full, so we can
Yes, it is.
certainly, we can get to as many items as possible, yes.
No, I wanted to know about policy issues for other than that, because we will probably have a pretty full time. Yeah, not to workshop it there.
On my wish list.
Absolutely. And the agenda will go out to the board beforehand?
Yes.
Good.
Our chief of staff will be sending out that agenda within the next day or two.
Yeah. So, and I've had a chance to brief it, and you'll want to, you'll want to look at it ahead of time so you start thinking about the questions. Although it's always amazing to me when we all get together, I think we think about things we wouldn't have thought about once we all start talking, but still take a look at it in advance and give some thought to the questions and the issues. And I think it will be a very worthwhile time spent. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then I'm just going to bring up the other policy now, since it sounds like we may be tight on time next week. We have policy GCQC, which basically is we give our authority to accept like terminations to the superintendent, and then the superintendent gives that authority to human resources. So when a teacher resigns, they have the authority to accept that resignation. And in theory, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But we're kind of in a teacher shortage and retention. And what it does is, as soon as they resign, it goes to human resources, and then they accept it and send out a letter. And at that point, it's done. It'll come before the board. And since we're in this cycle of really needing human capital and retention, there have been other boards across the country that are kind of looking at that policy. Is that me? Excuse me. I don't know what that was. ESPN, I think. So I don't know if it's...
You said there are other boards
across the country that are looking at that policy, and they're waiting a longer time because of the human capital issue that we're having, the retention and recruitment that we're having. So they're waiting a longer time before they accept the resignation. So I don't know if that is a policy that the board would be willing to review and just kind of hash it out to see if what we've always done is still a good practice for us to continue to do, or maybe we need a little bit more time allotted before resignations are, in fact, some school boards across the country aren't accepting that resignation for like a couple of weeks. They're really like reviewing it, talking to the employee, getting more information before they kind of turn around and accept that resignation, because we're all in we're having a hard time recruiting and retaining teachers. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there and see if I had support from the board, if they thought it was worthwhile to review.
Well,
the policy, I think, was rewritten in 2015, so it is, this is the last time it was reviewed, so it's probably due.
I think, I don't know what's with my voice, I'm sorry. I think Dr. Vasquez, it would probably be a good idea for Dr. Williams to take a look at that. At first, when you're saying that, I'm envisioning that people just don't get to resign. We just say, sorry.
There is something against indentured servitude.
Yeah, we're going to go out to your house tomorrow, and we're picking you up, and you're coming in. Or we're just not going to let you leave tonight unless we have your sworn oath that you'll be here tomorrow.
They're not like they're asking them, like especially those that resign in the middle of the school year, they're asking them to please stay to the end of the school year, not accepting the resignation till the end of the school year. So they're doing things like that to kind of bring consistency to the schools.
Certainly something to explore.
Absolutely. And our principals, for the most part, when they do receive a letter of resignation, they do go through that process. They will talk to the teacher. They'll say, I want you to think about it, hold on to the letter, and then let's talk. So that does happen quite a bit. There are some cases, though, when an employee submits their resignation and the principal does accept it. That is part of their operational duties, is to hire and recommend individuals who may not be a good fit.
Okay.
Yes, I would just say that ultimately it's the authority of the board to, like, they're on our consent agenda. So that's another thing that I wanted to look at, is like it's on our consent agenda, and when asked, if we've given our authority away, why do the terminations or the resignations come on our consent agenda for us to approve? And I was told, well, it's for notification purposes. So then I would ask, well, if it's for notification purposes, why is it on the consent agenda, and why do we have to approve it? It shouldn't be on we're approving it. And if it's just for notification reasons because we've given our authority to the superintendent, then maybe we need to look at the processes to which that occurs.
Good point. Member,
I believe we're going back to the operational versus governance delegations that are set forth in the Florida statutes. I believe the statute says notification, not approval.
Well, and to Member Gallo's point, if it's notification versus approval, it wouldn't need to be on the consent agenda. It could be just for the board's notice, and so not a voted issue, which would make a lot more sense. It makes no sense for us to vote on something we have no authority over. So we might want to information.
We can look
only.
at that if it need what the statute states, and then it may be that it would just be
for information only. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Great point. Thank you. Member Felder.
Yes. It would be good. It sounds wonderful if we could, say to teachers, anybody that's expressing a desire to resign, but if a person wants to go, you cannot make them stay. They want to go, you got to let them go. However, to your point, Member Gallo, some time ago at one of the board members, you talked about when we looked at, and this is something probably can discuss at our retreat, when you have like a school where 50 teachers are leaving or 60 teachers are resigning, then Superintendent Vasquez, maybe that's something, without getting in the area of operational, Amy, that may be something in terms of discussion. But most of the people that I know that are resigning, that have resigned, they ready to go. You can't, hold it back. But I do understand sometimes something has happened and there's been a misunderstanding. And when the principal comes and talks and says, are you sure? Is it something we can work out? And a lot of times it is something that can be worked out, and they stay. But again, as Attorney Inval has said, there's a thin line between operational and, governance. You can't approve if a diva wants to leave. If a person wants to leave, you have to allow them to go. But I'm sure we'll have time to discuss all those wonderful things.
Right, and
Thanks.
I do recognize that there are, especially during these times that we're living, where there may be an emotional response, and giving the employee time to reflect and really think about it and put some time and space between what actually triggered that is something in our best interest, because we are in the middle of, a critical shortage area. And so to be able to help our principals understand steps they can take so that they can have those conversations and make sure that this truly is what's the best for the
Mr. Howard, don't leave yet. Sorry. Are you good? Okay. Mr. Howitt, sorry. I just wanted to I wasn't sure if you were paying attention back there. It looked like you were maybe having some other conversations and may not be aware of what you need to brace yourself for. I'm looking for the headline tomorrow. Orange County School Boards solves teacher shortage by holding all teachers hostage. You're on it? Okay. Anything else? All right, we've done enough damage for tonight. Let's adjourn. Thank you all.
We're going to send Chief Holmes to your house.
Yes.
We just need ankle bracelets for him.